But wait, this isn't how it happened.
No, we made our choices. We could have made better ones, but I don't have any regrets.
We can talk about this being about Fionna and Cake all we want. Realistically, they were but a vehicle for this to be about Simon.
Yeah, listen, we loved our man as Ice King. Was I sad when he went back to Simon at the end of the original series? Yes. I loved our quirky, crazy princess kidnapping Ice King. And he becomes Simon, back to his nerdy self. And he starts off, depresso messo, I miss Betty. What are you talking about? Betty ruined the old universe. You watch it, and you're like, damn, I love Simon again.
So actually, you brought up the whole part where he's like really sad and he's like, I miss Betty. Do you remember that song that plays when he's returning to the human city?
Part of the
Kept thinking, the sound of this is so familiar. I feel like it's Rebecca Sugar. And I looked it up, and it is. But in looking that up, I also saw this fun fact where it says the words madness and sadness in the lyrics are referencing the theory Betty made up about the wizards in the episode You Forgot Your Floaties. She concluded wizards share the common attributes of magic, madness, and sadness.
Oh my gosh, wow. I mean, there's so many things throughout the show that, like, they either had plot holes from the originals that they've taped up, or things that they've shown in greater depth. You see so much more of Betty in this show that creates this, I mean, I thought she was a villain in the original one, and she becomes such more of a dynamic character that I almost feel as guilty as Simon, just seeing her as one-dimensional from the original.
Yeah, because I think at the end of the original series, we were both kind of like, I guess they're never touching on the fact that Betty gave up everything. It was of her own volition. I don't think Simon, like, tricked her into it.
So you got on the bus with her?
Yep. Well, no. Why would I?
Yeah, I mean, Betty did give up those things, and she admits it. Yeah, that's not the path I chose. You know, I did decide to stay with you, and I don't regret that path, but at the same time, my life could have been really different. And, you know, he comes to terms with the fact that he never even noticed those things about her. It took him 1,000 years and so many different forms of himself and an adventure with some random girl whose universe is stuck in his head to go, did I maybe, like, overlook my girlfriend's feelings and passions?
Yeah, like, the whole Casper and Nova video game that he was playing when he was, like, in the Shermie's body.
Yeah, Shermie.
But it's so interesting because it's obviously such a direct allegory. They weren't even trying to be, like, sleek about it. But it's the one part where he's like, oh, she's holding open the door. So either she can get crushed and you can get what you want, or that entire goal is worthless and she can live. And he's kind of like, I don't want to have to pick between those two. But it's one of those things where you can't go back. You're already at that point where you had to pick it.
You know what I was also thinking? That, like, Fionna and Cake's relationship almost mirrors that as well in the beginning. Even though Fionna and Cake had a past of them having a magical world, at the beginning of the show, they have no memory of this. They don't know about this. And Fionna looks at Cake as, that's my pet cat. She does what I want to do. Like, at the end of the day, I have to rescue her because we're doing what I want to do. And they have to have that separation at some point where Cake says, I'm capable of making my own decisions. Like, I can do this. And you see that, like, there is this relationship built on trust, friendship, and respect that then can make a perfect, you know what I mean? Whether it's a friendship or a romance, it's the foundation. And Finn and Jake have that. Shermie and Beth have that. Fionna and Cake have that. And Simon and Betty never got a chance to explore that because he never got to see that she was capable of having decisions and opinions.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I also remember now when they have that scene of Shermie and Beth leaving that kingdom and they have to use teamwork with the whole ladder portal thing. And at first I was like, why are they showing this scene? It feels not relevant to the show at all. But then I realized it's because it's showing that you really do need that teamwork, the 50-50, to get good results. Otherwise, you're just going off of one person's plan, and that's never going to provide enough insight. I also want to bring up the adult Finn still being a pillar to who he was, unlike some other shows that I feel the need to make their youthful, fun protagonists turn into jaded, sad old people.
So true. Big awooga on Finn's part. Oh my gosh. Number one, chest tattoo. So sad about Jake. Man is buff as hell, but also he's still just soft Finn. Like, okay, you know, we do realize in every universe Finn was going to become a buff daddy. It was just going to happen. Those are his genetics. But true Finn Mertens is there, you know? He's just this goofy little guy who has magical insight for those around him. I've seen people talking about the whole bandana around the eyes thing and how it came from, what's the name of that episode?
What's egress mean?
Exit.
In that episode, he learned that not to look at his physical surroundings, but how he feels in his surroundings. And he's taking that into his adult life, 20 years later? It's just so insane to see how they've taken early episodes of Finn's growing up and experiences and manifested it into his adult self.
I remember not really thinking I would be laughing at as much because I knew this would be maybe a darker series, but the scene where Simon was like, why didn't you warn me about the tree?
Why didn't you tell me about the tree?
What tree?
As kind as he was and how much he was trying to help Simon, even Finn has his limits in being able to reach certain people, because Finn may be a human, but he is a human from these times. Simon is the only human from olden times. There's going to be a disconnect.
Yeah, I think it also comes down to, at that point, Simon didn't want to help himself. His assumption was, if I don't have Betty, I'm not going to be happy. And, Finn tried to give him a little bit of a therapy jutsu there. I think he set him off on his way. And I think while Fionna helped Simon realize those things, he had to come to terms with it on his own. That, these are the decisions that got him here. This is the life he's currently living. And he can't keep looking backwards when there's so much ahead of him.
Also, if we're still talking about the whole Simon-Betty relationship, there was a part where Prismo was showing Fionna and Cake what Simon and Betty's backstory was. And it shows the scene from the finale of the original show where they were both in Gulp's head. And Betty says, "Oh, Simon, it's good to see you." Simon says, "It's good to be seen." I know it's a little thing. Simon was so used to his story being centered, whether or not there was malice in that, definitely not malice. But he didn't even say it's good to see you too, because he doesn't truly see Betty until that scene where she's Gulp and he's saying, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry."
In the original series, she's talking to Finn and she's showing her backstory to him. And she's saying, yeah, I did give things up for him. She's cognizant of the things that happened. When he goes to chase her at the bus stop, he runs into her roommate first, who is like, hey, she's doing this amazing thing. Don't stop her. And he's like, there she is. I need to go stop her. And again, she's telling him, oh, I'm about to get on my bus. I'm going to go study petroglyphs. And he's like, how about instead we do my dream? Love you. And she's like, yes.
Yeah. It's something where I'm not sure if they didn't realize that was happening in the first series, noticed it, and then did a really good job fixing it in this series, or if they were laying down the work and knew that they would eventually delve into Simon's story more. Either way, it came across as if it was planned out the entire time, because it was so seamless bringing that topic into the series.
Yeah, I think Adventure Time has one of the greatest, whether or not they create plot holes, being able to cover them up. I mean, there's so many things. I mean, Fionna and Cake being a fan fiction in the original show, to Prismo creating this whole, oh yeah, I purposely put it in Ice King's head. So smart, so seamless.
Ice King.
What?
Hey, Ice King, can I store a fan-made alternate universe in your cursed dome?
Sure, Magic Flashlight. You can put anything you want in there.
I think they go for the, instead of what you didn't know, they go for what I didn't know, what I didn't see was.
Yes, they put the onus on the characters instead of the audience. That's so smart, you're right. So I think something fun would be just to kind of go through the episodes, give a general response to how we felt about them, and then finish up with maybe talking about the larger themes and characters. So episode 1 was Fionna Campbell. Obviously at that point, Cake isn't really a character, just a cat, but we get to see the other characters. Gotta love Marshall Lee, gotta love, what's his name, Gumball, but what's his name in that, Gary?
Is it Gary?
Why do I feel like it's Gary or some shit? How do we not know? He was in the entire show.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just calling them by their names.
Wait, give me a second.
Gary? Why would they name him Gary?
It's such a bad name.
Like Marshall Lee sounds like Marceline. Bubblegum.
Am I making this up maybe?
Well, his name was Prince Gumball in the original fanfiction one. So would Gumball turn into Gary somehow? Did they just choose a name that started with G because Gumball starts with G? Bonnabelle? Bubblegum. Gary Gumball? Is it just because it's an alliteration?
Wait, am I making this up or is his name not Gary?
Well,
I can't find it.
What do you mean? Why are you so bad at this?
My computer's running really slowly.
Hold on. He is Gary.
What the fuck?
I guess because it's Bonnabelle Bubblegum, so he's Gary
Gumball? That's so stupid.
Yeah, I don't know why we just remembered his name is Gary right now.
Um,
She goes to the shop and she's like, Gary! I think while watching it, we were like, is this just a slice of life based on the fan fiction? What's going on here? Adorable town. But it was a really slow introduction to what would be the show. What beautiful moments come from episode 1. Her talking about the bank is our oldest building. Hunter giving her the little dandelion to wish on, and you're like, okay, like these are whatever moments. they wrap around so nicely. Just tie a little bow on it.
I was so stupid, and I didn't go in thinking that this show would be that deep. No problem if it is or isn't, but I thought this would be more of, like you said, like more of a slice of life based on it, so I wasn't analyzing too much for the first few episodes. Wish I was. Episode 2, Simon Petrikov, is obviously the one where Simon's in his feels and people are trying to help him and it's not working. And I think the thing I was most taken aback by was perhaps him, I don't want to say holding against his will, but he was, however, holding against his will a Chuskus who seemed almost possessed by a demonic spirit. So what was that?
They really did not touch on that. The last time we see Chuskus in that timeline is he's delivering the Card of Liga moisturizer. That is the last bit of timeline that we have of Chuskus until Simon has abducted him.
Bye.
How lucky for me that oblivious is he. The boy is none the wiser of my cart of illegal moisturizer.
We have no timeline, no backstory onto why he's abducted this very rude, like, emo, possessed Chuskus who he's using as a battery source.
It makes sense why he ends up in hell, but what confuses me is Chuskus always seem to just kind of vibe.
Yeah, I mean, did he trick people into buying goods that were not what they lived up to? Sure, but he was a businessman. What happened? How did he get to be in the predicament in which he was in?
My question is, was he evil and Simon was like, I'll use your evilness as a battery? Or did Simon say, I need something evil as a battery, and he did something to Chuskus? The next episode is Cake the Cat. We already at this point understand Simon's issue that he has to overcome, being his reluctance to move on past what could have been with Betty. The whole Cake and Fionna issue is that they sometimes, in their search for adventure, don't think about what's actually helping the people around them. They have to learn to earn the hero's heart.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, it is reflective of early Finn, who kind of along the way in the original show has this, am I hurting people along the way? Like, oh, this is so fun. Am I having a cause and effect on this world? And they have to learn that a lot faster, because as we see, this show is a lot gorier. And there are people just dying and being slaughtered left and right as a cause and reaction to Fionna and Cake's place in Oo and the other universes they travel to.
It's interesting because in my last video, I talked about moral scaling and how Adventure Time, some of these characters we know and love have done really messed up things that we kind of brush over, but there are episodes where they're doing things where you're supposed to know it's wrong. So Finn and Jake have accidentally done really bad things, but they gloss it over. But in certain episodes, like with Flame Princess, where he was making her fight with the Ice King, the audience knew that in that episode, the writers wanted us to think it was bad. And I think Adventure Time is very good at that. So Fionna and Cake doing all these accidentally is brushed off more than certain behaviors that are almost less intense.
Like, not trusting your friends, not respecting your friends, like, that's unforgivable. Murdering a bunch of candy people is like, I mean, things happen.
We didn't know. It's all about self-improvement afterwards. Which moves us to Prismo, the Wishmaster. We already talked about the fact that it was so well done how they made this part of the canon by saying it was a Prismo idea. I think we should also talk about the fact that Prismo, though, put an entire universe in Ice King's head, knowing that Ice King just couldn't do it.
Yeah, I love Prismo, and he is a god for a reason, because that man just plays with everybody's lives.
The fact that, though, this is also where we introduce the Scarab, and you start to think that, oh man, Prismo was just kind of vibing for all these years, but he was not supposed to be vibing.
So it's really interesting how Prismo, I think in the original one, they create this like hierarchy of gods, Golb being the most important one or the most destructive, powerful one. But this kind of aspect, it's almost like an office workplace. There's like an HR people, there are like little office, like these people are working together in a very interesting office setting to manufacture the universe.
I've never expected the type of villain from Adventure Time to be the type who's that like classy, I pick things up with a napkin and I wear a suit that's very much tailored. But I thought it fit really well. That episode did a good job, I think, in setting up what the actual direct plot of the show would be, which would be the Scarab chasing them, trying to like set order, and them saying like, dude, calm the fuck down. But I think it was smart to cube Prismo, because it's one of those things where he could have really solved everything very easily. So you kind of had to put him off to the side so that the actual characters could have something to overcome.
You also cover like his own internal thing, just being in that cube. He's this like depresso meso, I miss Jake, thing that he's living in. And in that cube, he realized that there's other things for him to care about. And that he does want to help Simon, Fionna, and Cake. And it's worth breaking out of the cube for. So
I also like how in the end, when he ends up taking the Scarab on like an intern, he seems really excited to find someone to pass his knowledge on to, even if it was someone who was previously his enemy, which also goes to that thing that a lot of shows now are focusing more on rehabilitation as opposed to punishment.
Yeah, you're right. There's no, we killed the big baddie or they're in prison never to hurt anybody again. It's the big baddie was confused. We can help them see that friendship is good.
So the next episode is Destiny, which,
oh man, we get a second hot Finn, all right? This is 2 for 2 already. He's also like a sacrificial, hot, angry dad.
You keep using the word is.
Was.
I think that was what it really hit me, that this show is like, no one was safe. Even though Simon does end up living and having his happy ending, I was like, at some certain points thinking, they very well might kill him.
There was a few moments where I was like, this is it, he's gonna die.
Then we have, this episode you should probably enjoy, in which Brian David Gilbert voices the Winter King. The Winter King.
Yes. Oh my god. Okay, I love a princely man's, okay? And he was classy, and he was a king, and also he was a little evil, and had a little bit of problems. I was into it. He sang a cute little song, he wore a nice little suit, and Cake was into it too. She said that Simon and Winter King should kiss, and they should have.
Kiss each other!
Don't think it hasn't occurred to me.
That entire episode, though, I think was really interesting and also implying that none of these characters are morally perfect, and in certain circumstances, any of them could have gone on the path of evil. I don't know how to feel about that. It's a little dark.
Yeah, I don't know what the next episode is on the list, but eventually we'll get to the vampire base. That's the next one. And I think that then perfectly it foreshadows in how we have how our interactions with other people has such, a repercussion with everyone else. In Winter King's world, there is no Marceline. There is only an ice version of her, which is to say he was either not able to save her or, his powers somehow killed her. He is memorializing her in a way, in the same way that he's like, you should make an ice Betty. Those always work. Like he's a loose end there. And then, somebody really rich would take care of you.
Simon, what would I do without you?
You'd be just fine, I promise.
He just doesn't see how his interactions with Marceline and how everything shaped her, had he not been there, what that would have turned out for her.
I actually put a lot of notes on this. That was the one part of the show I actually disliked.
Really?
I did. Maybe more so for Marceline's character than Simon's. A huge theme for her in the original series was that even though everything about you is stacked to be bad, like being a demon, being a vampire when they're all killing humans, you are still good. And I didn't like the fact that this was implying that without Simon, she would have inevitably gone down the path of evil. But
yeah, I think it has more to say with not that, because I do think that even in that episode, Marceline has these reservations. Like, she won't kill Bubblegum, and I think that is reminiscent of the fact that she is a good person. She's just living in a society that doesn't, create that space for her. That she has fallen into this, pattern of living with this vampire king, and there's no opportunity for her to even say, maybe I should make a different choice. And so I think that's what it has to do, is that the impact that we have on one another maybe doesn't have a full, impact on our personality, but it does show us that there are different options. And she wanted Simon to have a different option. And I think that's what also she reflected on throughout her childhood was Simon chose the wrong thing. He chose the wrong thing, and I don't want to choose the wrong thing. So I think I see it more like that.
People are dying left and right in these universes. I thought there would be more goofy ones, but they all were just mostly depressing, if I'm being honest.
They were, but the overall story of all of the, the series is that somehow we're all interconnected to each other. I mean, Bubblegum and Marceline continually find each other. And Finn and Huntress Wizard continually find each other in different ways. Bubblegum and Marceline's love is just boundless. But Finn and Huntress Wizard are individuals meant to assist each other in life. And Simon and Betty are not meant to be together, and yet they still are drawn to one another. I just kind of like this repetitive, notion that you'll constantly find the people that you're supposed to be with.
Wow, that was really deep and beautiful. Especially because multiverses are really popular right now, and I think Adventure Time did a good job of making it their own. And I also like the fact that a lot of these aren't beholden to time either, because Prismo doesn't really experience time in a linear fashion, so these universes don't either. Because if you think about it, how are Fionna and Cake's characters the same like age they were 10 years ago when they were in like the story inside of... Because now we know it wasn't a story, it was all real inside of Simon's head, but he's aged 10 years now, which would imply the world's been alive for 10 years.
Yeah, I see what you mean. That's true.
So it makes me think that they didn't start living in a linear sense until Prismo made them their own world, which is interesting. It's goofy and it doesn't really make sense, but because Adventure Time fosters such a good atmosphere for not making sense, it doesn't bother me.
You're right. When he puts the world in Ice King's head and Ice King starts writing it as a fan fiction, I mean, she looks a little younger than she does in when Fionna and Cake is set. I mean, she looks like 16. And Fionna and Cake is set, she looks like she's like early 20s,
Yeah.
if that.
I was thinking like 20.
I was thinking like, yeah, 19 to 22-ish, but that's not a 10-year gap at all. So yeah, there is a little bit of that kind of inconsistency there.
The fact that Cake is alive. So the next episode is Jerry, which which is where Bemo's just vibing all alone. There's the Lich that he calls Jerry.
Here's the thing. I can forgive Fionna and Cake for a lot of deaths in that show. A lot of them. I will not forgive Fionna for totally killing Bemo for no reason. Oh, we can't find the crown. After Bemo explodes, like what I had the whole time. That was my Bemo.
It was more like an alternate version of your Bemo. There's still
It's
your
like
Bemo.
a forked off universe of my
You're
Bemo.
right. No, it was still
That
sad.
Bemo loved Finn and Jake and wanted to help the, like, who knows how long it had been since they had seen a person.
Yeah.
First people come along, oh, let me help you. Explodes and gets turned into an alarm clock.
Fucking alarm clock. And this episode sets up a lot of the Betty Simon story that we talked about earlier, which leads into the next episode, Casper and Nova, which is the game that Ice King is playing inside of Cherubi's head while trying to figure out a way to stop the Gulb Betty from holding him in this weird trance while trying to save Fionna and Cake, whose world is being overtaken by the Scarab, who escaped and I think point blank murdered everyone from HR, including the cool little happy island guy.
Oh my gosh.
Hello, I'm Perry, the living island of insight. May you direct me to the nearest ocean?
That was, I'm just a little island. Is there a nearby sea? And gets blasted through the face. That episode was one of my favorites, I think, for the overarching, like, this show as a total, but also in retrospect to the old one. I love how, you know, Simon has to kind of relive his relationship with Betty via this Nova Casper storyline, but also he sees how he's doing it not just with Betty, but with everybody else around him. He's mirroring that relationship as he's existing in Shermie with Beth. He doesn't trust that Beth can help him. He's trying to open this gun book and is like, I know how to read, you idiot. He doesn't know how to read the gun book though. He's stupid. Like, he doesn't trust that somebody else can have good information, can have a good opinion.
Him and Betty both have these self-sacrificing tendencies that manifest in different ways.
Yeah.
So for her, it's more about giving everything she has to Simon, and for him, it's when I feel shitty about myself, I want to put myself in the path of destruction as quickly as possible so I don't have to face the consequences of my actions.
Yeah, you're right. He really will. Yeah. He will throw himself in front of the gun without realizing how that can impact everything else. Like, you're trying to sacrifice yourself when we're saying, hey, there's no need to do that.
Exactly.
There's another viable option. No, I'll have to do this.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he doesn't really know how to live without Betty. Like, he's still really reeling up on that, which I understand.
Yeah, I think Adventure Time constantly shows this where people do bad things, but they don't usually do it with intention, right? Like, you know why Simon relied so much on Betty is because you see him before he meets her, and he's this, like, sad professor that people don't believe. They think he's crazy. And he sees this person who believes in him, and he just wants to ride that wave. Like, you understand why he got where he was. It just wasn't a good thing.
And going from Caspar Nova into the last episode, Cheers. And obviously the title Cheers represents the fact that, you know, but that is just kind of where everything gets ripped up, and where my only other criticism on this series comes in, which is I feel like there was one too many instances in the final episode of, oh yeah, we saved the day, wait, never mind.
Yeah, I agree. It happened like 3 or 4 times in a row, and I was like, okay, all right, I get it. I mean, I could have done without the Scarab doing actually, I don't care, I'm still gonna fight you again, and he ruins the world like a 3rd time.
It was unnecessary.
Yeah.
It was probably so they could do the whole, we're rebuilding together, because that's how you can finish every show like that. But
yeah, he destroyed it too much. They needed to get it to a reasonable, like, it's just construction, not the fabric of our universe.
I think it was sweet. Like, you had brought up earlier the dandelion, or like how that was like a whole wish, how everyone can, I don't even know. It's just beautiful, man.
Prisma grants wishes, and a lot of them are like these insane, like building new multiverses and adding that to like everything. But, you know, Fionna realizes that like her first initial wish to be fully magical is that, no, I just want to be with these people. Like, I just want to live happily. If my wish to be magical wipes away our world, then what's the point? You know what I mean? If everybody loses who they are, then that doesn't really count as like living happily together. And so her wish is just for everybody to be the best versions of themselves together, which is just so beautiful.
In a way, that was Adventure Time romanticizing our world, like the viewer's world. Like, our reality can be just as beautiful, and we can be just as connected as the characters in Adventure Time, even though we don't have magic.
Fionna is traveling all of these universes with Simon, and you're like, oh, what a magical fun adventure she's going on. However, we keep going back to her world where Marshall Lee and Gary are getting together, and that scene is just as an equally magical experience. Like, they are just getting coffee together, you know, standing up to his mother, which are such mundane things, but that's an equal part of the show's plotline.
So, in the end, you know, Betty is able to save Simon. It's kind of sad that whole scene where he redoes, like you said, he goes to the bus stop anyway. He's like, what the fuck?
And it's all red because it's in Golb's mind.
It's in Golb's mind. Ugh. And he's like, this isn't how it went. Like, he tries to fix it, but he realizes, like, I can't. Everything's already happened.
Her line, which is, like, again, very reminiscent of Steven Universe, when she goes, I have no regrets. You were an experience.
I don't have any regrets. You were a wonderful experience.
You were everything.
You are an experience is the line of Cartoon Network, all right? That is, they're gonna keep repeating it, and it's gonna keep hitting just as hard every time.
Cartoon Network is so romantic.
Life is romantic.
Life is romantic.
Being with people who you care about and having just experiences with them, just being near them and like being a part of their life and you being a part of theirs, that is romantic.
And it really is beautiful how even this happens in this sad moment where he realizes, yeah, I messed up, but I know that you gave me the gift of life and I'm not going to waste that anymore, wishing that you hadn't. And what I also noticed is that Simon tells that little Fionna Cake nerd, that little fangirl.
Oh yeah.
He tells that like fangirl about his story that he went on, and I think it's implied that that fangirl writes the Caspar and Nova storybook game.
Oh.
So it's almost like fan influencing author, because like we said, it's not linear. So the Betty Golb didn't send him to a different universe. That's it! He was trying to find the answer in all these different universes, but the real answer wasn't in a different universe, it was in his own universe in the future, so he could realize that he would just be repeating himself again and again and again until he accepted the now. Wow.
There's just so many things to think about and talk about, because they just create this thing where, again, it's so, the topic is so human, right? There's not this grand, like, experience that needs to be had. We don't need to save freaking the world from Thanos. Like, this is not a big thing. It's just, I need to accept my life. I need to welcome people into my life. And like, that's seen in so many metaphors. It's seen in the metaphor with like Hunter planting weeds, that sometimes something that people don't like can be beautiful as long as you accept that it has a place.
Yes. And I think it was also really important that in the end, his big solution, the big change he had to make, was simply not trying to fit into life now, but building his own life.
Simon and Fiona are both experiencing that, right?
Yes.
Simon is seeing, he's in his world, he's in Ooh saying, I'm isolated. I'm not like anybody else and nobody's like me. And Fiona's in her world saying, I want so much more from this world and everybody else just seems to be content living in it. But what they don't realize is that in both of their worlds, they're saying, you know, I'm alone, I'm by myself. Everybody else is an individual. They've just figured out what their place is and how they can interact with others to make a community. And both of them come to that realization independently in their own worlds.